How's everybody doing this morning, afternoon, whatever time it is? I'll warn you as my voice sounds completely shot. I did 10 straight days in Vegas, ending last Friday, which is exactly 7 more days than any human being should ever be in Las Vegas. So my feet hurt, my liver fell out, and my voice is gone, but we're gonna try to muscle through this thing today. As he said, my name is Paul Redding. I am the head of MSP partnerships at NinjaOne. I know there's a lot of conversation around MSP, managed service providers. I'm not gonna try to live in that world today, but I will give you a little warning. That's the world I grew up in. So my background, I had an MSP based in Memphis, sold it in 2019 after about 14 years of running it. And although we were based in Memphis, we operated nationally. Our big niche was compliance. So I did healthcare. I've actually, I think, worked with that gentleman right there a couple of times before, and I did Department of Defense supply chain. So if there wasn't some weird acronym that kept you awake at night, my company was like way too expensive for you. Since then, what I've done is I've spent this last several years working with software companies in and around the MSP space to translate what they do simply downstream to their resellers and their partners, because frankly speaking, in a room full of techs, I'm probably the dumbest person in every room. Although I own an IT company, I am not a technologist. Matter of fact, what we're gonna talk about today was a real source of frustration for me when I owned my company, because after a couple of years of deploying the old legacy tools and letting my guys run with it, I realized I couldn't use them, I didn't understand them, and all they were was a big roadblock between me and knowing where my data was going and what my company was actually doing. Guys, simply put, I then and you now deserve better IT management. The stuff that got us here, the tools that we used starting back when I started my company in the early 2000s were great. And you had a tool per process, a tool per goal. So you had a remote support tool, you had an infrastructure management tool, you had patching tools, you had antivirus, you had all of these different things at all of these different layers. And it was okay back then. There was only about 8 or 10 of them. The modern IT director, the modern MSP, the modern IT provider is juggling something like 30, 40, 50 different software applications because the build and the sprawl has been so extreme. The other thing that has happened while we talk about this tool sprawl is the problem that you have has changed. Back when I was an MSP, when we talked about endpoint management, for example, I meant computers. When we talked about protecting a network, I meant locally, that IP, the stuff behind your firewall. All of that has shifted. In 2026, buying patterns have changed, deployment patterns have changed, attackers have changed the attack vector and what they're looking at and the way that they get to you. So we and our tools have all got to evolve. Another thing that's happening right now is consolidation. I work in a world where Kaseya has now about 41 different products that they've gradually absorbed into that thing, into that machine, and they're consistently acquiring more and more and more every day. The tool that you use today is somebody else's tool tomorrow. Another thing that's happened here, employees have changed the way they work. I have a bunch of Gen Zs. They don't want to use their laptop. They don't want, matter of fact, I just hired a young lady that came in and I assume we're gonna send her a monitor and a docking station. No, she wants the smallest device she can possibly have. She works remotely and all the time in different places everywhere. That idea of sitting down behind a computer is completely alien to her. Anybody seen, for example, the importance matrix based on screen size? Anybody seen this meme? So if you have 3 screens, you're entry level. You have 2 screens, you're a level 2 engineer. You have 1 screen, you're a manager. You have an iPad, you're an executive. And you only have an iPhone, you run the business, you're the CEO. Apparently I should be CEO because I haven't opened my laptop in like 3 weeks. I do my entire business off my phone. Matter of fact, the security team sent me a Slack and was like, dude, did you lose your laptop? I was like, nah, I just don't ever open it, right? The goals and the environment that we are in has completely changed, but our tools haven't. We're still using the same old stuff. And more importantly, the issues that we're having now have just simply evolved. Everybody knows that an unpatched computer is a problem, right? 0-day threats, known vulnerabilities, the idea that if you don't keep your Microsoft system all the way up to date, that I'm gonna jump in that Surface over there because something Microsoft forgot to do, and I'm gonna take that thing over. Guys, the same thing is true for every device in your environment. When we talk about the change between yesterday and today, I no longer need to put a virus on your computer to get to you. I can come through unpatched alien devices inside the network. I can drop in through something that you connected to your network you don't even think is possibly an attack vector. For example, guys, those mobile devices, yes, your phone, yes, your iPad, yes, everything else. Dude, at my house, my microwave's on the internet. Don't ask me why. I have no idea why I put that thing on the internet, but it's connected. My washing machine sends me a notification when my clothes are done. In your business environments, both IT and your employees are coming in and they're plugging shit in and you don't know what it is, and you don't think about the fact that it's just another attack vector. But if you're in IT management, it is your responsibility to protect everything that we're talking about on a daily basis. So 5 years ago, if I came up here and I said, hey, we're an RMM, we're endpoint management, you're like, right, you keep computers patched. Sure, that's part of it. Now, everything else in the environment, though, has to be patched and protected. At this point, if you're not protecting Linux, and you're not protecting Android or iPads and all of your devices, iOS, then you leave these huge attack vectors out there just to be exploited. But it's a problem, because the modern tools today were built to do this. The odds are that if you're in IT management right now, you don't have them. If you're an MSP right now, you haven't switched over. It's hard in many cases to move from yesterday's technology into today's. And so that complacency, that thing that says, oh, I'll deal with it tomorrow, that thing that says, what I have now has always been good enough, it gets you. It leaves you sitting there, and then one day you have this sprawl across the network, everything goes to shit, you have no idea what just happened, and it's all because you got complacent. You sat back and said, what got me here is gonna get me there. Folks, it's not gonna do that. Siloed tools where you have individual functions per tool create another attack vector for you and another place of complexity. If you're using one thing to remote into my system and another to patch it, you not only have to protect both of these logins, but they have to work in unison. I don't know for sure that what I am doing worked. I'm jumping between dashboards. And there's a new name of the game in town, right? Which is do more with less. Who here's manager or customer says, here's a lot more money, I realize stuff got more complicated? Anybody? I didn't think so, right? Nobody's giving you more money because this stuff got rougher. Nobody is saying, hey, Paul, listen, I realize that all of a sudden these folks out there are attacking in different ways, so there's a 30% budget increase. Guys, if anything, they're taking it away. AI, for example, has convinced everybody that we're supposed to be able to ditch one head count and 9 functions and dump that stuff out into AI. But it's not gonna do that for you. AI is not gonna replace you. People using AI might replace you. And yes, you can improve your functionality, you can get more efficient, and you should get more efficient with those tools. But it's not gonna get you all the way there. And yet still, your boss or your customer on either side of the table says, I get it, I realize it's more complicated, I do need you to take care of it, I'm taking 20% out of your bucket, right? How do we do that? What was the answer? Because it's definitely not going to buy an extra tool. It's definitely not going to layer in stuff that we have to go back and justify the cost. The tools we are already using, the things that we are working with have got to get more efficient and more safe, and they've got to put money back to the bottom line. That's how you keep your job. And if you're an MSP, that's how you keep your customer, doing more efficiently with less. But those old tools can't do that. Guys, the same problem exists in your backups. And this is a really big one. I want to stop on this one for a second and talk all the way through what we're looking at today. When I was an MSP and I went into a customer's systems, backups were maybe the first thing I sold. Because your customer, your IT group was probably not getting it right. Most of the time, what they were doing is they were backing up the files to somewhere and they would say, okay, great, listen, if the computer dies, we're gonna completely reload the system, we're gonna get it all the way back up, and then I'm gonna load your files over. That downtime was unacceptable. My customers were factories, my customers were healthcare. They didn't have room for me to first go through and manually rebuild the operating system, right? And then drag in all their data. So we got smart, right? Early mid-2000s, I started doing VMs, switching everything to virtual machines, being able to bare metals back up the virtual machine, spin it up in the cloud. We got sexy with our backups, we really did. And so today, in the world that we live in, I assume everybody's working with backups to, well, what? Well, I mean, they're gonna back up to the cloud or another storage device. You're capable of spinning it back up locally, I hope. If the local restoration is either unavailable, the building burned down, whatever that is, Sure, you want to be able to go back in and do a traditional backup restore. Think, I can't have my server go offline. Everything that's on my server is critically important. I'm going to spin that up in the cloud, or I'm going to spin it up locally. And that is still very, very critical when you talk about servers. But what about your workstations? What about your laptops? Is everybody here still backing up the laptops? I mean, don't get me wrong, the company I work for, we have a tool that'll back up your laptop. I gotta be real. My laptop's backed up to Microsoft. Everything I do on my laptop that's of any importance, if it ain't in the downloads folder, it's in Microsoft's cloud all day long, right? Well, that means I don't need to worry about backups. Microsoft's got it. Or my last company I worked for, miserable to deal with, Google Workspace was not my favorite because I'm a Microsoft kid. I couldn't figure out how to make it work for me, but I did know one thing. Hey, everything on my computer is all backed up to Google. I feel good about that. Guys, is it? If I back up to Microsoft, here's a question for you. Who's backing up Microsoft? Who's backing up Google? Anybody heard that one yet? I'll ask an open question to the room. Does anybody know what Microsoft Section 6B of the user license agreement says? I got a gift card for anybody who can answer that question. Microsoft 6B, anybody in the room? Going once, what you got? That's right, stop by our booth, I'm gonna get you a gift card. That is right, what this gentleman said right here. Microsoft Section 6B simply states, we ain't backing up your cloud. I don't know what section Google's is, but it says it. Matter of fact, Salesforce, everybody says this. So I'm gonna give you a little lesson on the difference between high availability and backed up. High availability is what you get from Microsoft. That means that Microsoft has servers all over the world, disparate data centers, and a major disaster in Texas does not take down your data in the Ukraine, right? A major disaster in Florida, you're still functional because your stuff is working out of California and all those other data centers, and so on it goes. Google's the exact same way. However, if you have a ransomware attack, if your customer goes out there and says, hey, your customer, rather your employee, goes out there and says, I don't like my job, I'm doing something nefarious and I wanna hide this. They go into their little Microsoft and they say, okay, these emails right here are incriminating, I'm gonna delete those, and then they go into their trash and they delete that. That's gone after 30 days. 30 days later, there's nothing you can do to get that back. Ask Microsoft, they don't have it. Backups are not a 30-day problem. If you're in healthcare, if you're in Department of Defense manufacturing, if you're in banking or finance or any of these heavily regulated industries, you are required to be able to restore all data. Hard stop. You're supposed to be able to not only restore it, but to prove it wasn't tampered with, it wasn't changed, and that in any given moment, you can drop right back in there and get me the right version that originally existed as I was supposed to be working with it, and you have restoration targets and times. Guys, a ransomware attack against your Microsoft 365 or a malicious attack by one of your employees gives you highly available nothing. That is the nature of cloud backups. Highly available nothing. It is your responsibility in the modern era to look at that just like you looked at your endpoints and say, wait a second. So if Microsoft isn't doing this and Google isn't doing it, how do I do it? And guys, go look at your backup utility you're running right now. Open up the console, dig through that dashboard, and find me the part that says backup Microsoft 365. Where's the API from that desktop backup that says, yes, we're gonna move it into OneDrive, but then when OneDrive goes up to the cloud, we're going to go back that up? You don't have it. And many tools will do this, but most of you, if you're doing that, have probably gone and got a third-party tool. So back to where my original thing with like the monitoring and management systems, I have remote access and I have patching. And in many cases, then I have my security tool and I have my vulnerability tool. It's 4 different tools that have to operate together to keep Windows patched and working, or even like Linux or any of your systems patching and working. The exact same thing is true in many, many cases for your backups. I'm jumping over here to make sure my workstation's backed up, looking at all my servers and going, okay, like I see my restoration, I can quickly restore that. And then if you have a SaaS backup solution, you're running over here and you're grabbing that SaaS backup solution and you're looking at it in 2 different places. Again, doing more with less, you just ask your technicians or your engineers to do twice the work. And by the way, this is a zero fail allowed game. You cannot screw this up. Your backups are only as good as what? My man right here knows it, I won't make him say it, your last restoration. So everybody here, if you're running backups, when you go back, you need to ask yourself a question. Not only did I look and see that the system says my backups worked, have you restored it? Have you spun that thing back up? Have you actually looked to make sure your data is there? The same thing's true with your SaaS backups. I used a tool I will not call out in my own MSP when SaaS backups were pretty new. And it was Google, is actually who I went to work for later, is my company compliancy group. We installed a backup system for their Google Drive on it. And about, I'm gonna say 8 to 10 weeks in, we had exactly what I just described. An employee quit. I don't know what she was trying to hide, but she deleted basically her entire inbox. And then she went to the trash and she flushed it. She'd been doing that every month to 2 months with most of what was in her inbox for like 6 or 7 months leading up to her exit. I used this backup utility that told me everything was backed up, and what I got was about 50% of her inbox. We have no idea what happened to the rest of it. The company couldn't explain it to me. All they said, it was bad work practices by the employee. Dude, that's what we're talking about. I have backups so that you can work stupidly, right? All the tools that we're using right now are just to prevent human error and malicious activity. But in my case, when that human error happened or malicious activity, whichever the one you want to call that, I couldn't restore. And truth be told, when I went to my engineers, you know what their answer was? Dude, I'm so busy, man. I gotta be real. I don't think we've ever tried to restore something from it. I mean, it's a software backup to a software system. I assume it worked. Did I fire them? It's a longer story, but they got returned to market eventually for something mildly different. Because no, that's not exactly what I'm paying you to do. But by the same token, where was the real failure? It was on me. Because I chose too many tools. I created a system in which my employees could not reasonably work and do their job. And I said, hey dude, it's your fault when something screwed up. Guys, it is time to consolidate your tools into single panes of glass, where when you are operating to keep everything patched and managed, you see everything where it sits right now. Remote utilities, all of it in one pane of glass. When I go to backups, I should be able to see workstations, servers, Linux boxes, VMs, Microsoft, Google, all of the things that I am backing up in one place, and I should be one-click restoring those. And this should become a process for your engineers on a weekly or bi-weekly basis to go in and say, hey, listen, guys, we're automating all of this stuff. Has somebody put their finger on this thing and make sure it works? AI is not gonna do that for you yet. Even when it does, do we trust it completely to make that happen? No. AI is a confident liar, right? So I don't take credit for that quote. Like, so I was on a panel recently and somebody said that and was like, dude, that right there, AI is a confident liar. So if you just run all your systems and you say, well, yeah, but I'll grab one of these mini AI automation software out here to come in and bring it all together and trust that thing, you can't do it. You've got to make this more simple for the human beings that are inside your business to use tools like AI, to use tools like these backups and like your infrastructure management. Consolidation, simplicity, and consistency. That's what you're looking for, guys. The old way is just not gonna work. What got you here won't get you there. I'll say it again. If you are sitting here going, man, it has been a while since I evaluated my stack, you're right. You have to rethink that. Because I promise you this, your adversary has already rethought this. Nation state actors have moved to a place now where legacy IT becomes a target for them. Legacy IT thinking makes them better at their job. If you're living in a world where you wait for the ticket to come in to deal with the issue, you are already behind when the issue begins. If you live in a world with tool sprawl, with 16, 18, 20 different tools, and an attack or a ransomware, an incident starts, you ever ask your techs where they begin? I guarantee you 8 different techs have 8 different answers which tool they pick up first. Because you don't have consistency and you don't have simplicity. Guys, when it hits the fan, everybody's got to know to row in the right direction. But you can't do that with 40 different tools in your stack. You've got to be able to bring it together and make this thing more simple. And then another thing is the old tools don't adapt well. Everybody hears API, API, API. Listen, If you can't make it all one tool, the tools that you are working with have to talk together well. They've got to see each other. They have to work together. And one of the problems with legacy technology is it was not created in a world in which we anticipated all these things would touch and talk. As a matter of fact, never really thought about the fact that my RMM was supposed to manage my EDR, which should see my MDR, which should see my backups. 10 years ago, why would your AV need to see your backups, right? Now I can put tools and Trojans and things inside those backups and live there. We all have to be aware of each other, and the old ways aren't working for you. Another problem that you're gonna solve with a modern approach to IT is being not reactive, but proactive. You see, when you limit the dashboards, you limit the views, you get it all into a single pane of glass where you work every day, your guys have the time to go, that ain't right. What is this right here? This is anomalous, this is strange. I need to go ahead and move forward with taking action before this thing happens. You can put into play workflows that address things like backup testing and all of that because you've simplified their workload. Remember, more with less, you have less team, less human beings, and more work to do. Give them the right tools, folks. I know as we walk out of this room today, every one of you, if you hear me, goes, man, but Paul, migration sucks. Listen, I would rather set my face on fire than move from a major infrastructure management tool to another sometimes. I feel you. It's a frightening thing. But when the building starts burning and you waited till the end to do this, which one is worse? The agony of the migration or going to your customer or to your boss or to that executive going, hey man, listen, I thought what we had was good enough. It wasn't, and you lost $1 million. We're gonna be closed for the next 2 weeks while I try to restore. All our customers' data is gone, or worse, it's on the internet. If your client's in healthcare, they can be criminally charged because of mistakes on your side. Are you supposed to be HIPAA compliant yourself? Technically, yes. But are you gonna be the ones whose feet are held to the fire if this thing goes down? Absolutely not. It's gonna be your customer, or it's gonna be the organization itself. You as the IT person, at worst, you're gonna get fired. The owner of the business could get millions of dollars of fines. The jeopardy is tremendous, and it's all because complacency left us here. Guys, it is time to move forward and ask ourselves a couple of questions. Number one, do we have the right tools in place? Number two, are we patching consistently in a way that we can prove we did the right thing yesterday when it hits the fan tomorrow, okay? Number three for me is automate the expected. And I like that one. Do you know what that means? It means there's some shit that's just gonna happen every single day. You know what you have to deal with. There are repetitive tasks that you are asking your people to do right now that take them away from important things in the future. And don't set them up for success. That's where your AI comes in. That's where automation tools come in, is you look at the stuff that happens day in and day out and you say, why are we taking so long to deal with this when the real threat sits over here? So with a modern approach to this, you're gonna automate all of those repetitive tasks into a way that take them off of your team's plate and allow them to have time to focus on what matters. One of my favorite books, everybody gets into traction. I like OKRs. A lot of people hate OKRs. I like them. Measure What Matters is one of my favorite books. In IT, it's manage what matters, guys. You can't put your hands on every single one of these things every day. You've got to have automation. You've got to have the ability to say, some of this has got to come off my plate, and your old tools won't get you there. Guys, if you're living in a tool that you bought 10, 15 years ago, and you expect it to do what you need today, you're living in a fantasy world. You're living in the past. We've moved past that. What you're doing is you're creating roadblocks and obstacles for yourself. If you have not evaluated new solutions, then it's time to take a look at that. And yeah, sure, NinjaOne, we sell stuff. I promise at the end, if you stop by my booth, I got a solution for a bunch of this, but don't worry about it. It does not have to be me, it does not have to be us. What it has to be is a shift in mindset in this room. We all have to stop and look at ourselves and go, hey, wait a second. Is, and I'll say it one more time, what got me here gonna get me there? And the answer is no. The attackers know it, your customers know it, and deep down, you and your techs know it. There's one last shift I'll give you in the industry, and this one to me is probably the most interesting. When it's all said and done, 10 years ago, when my customers would look at me and they'd say, Paul, come take this stuff over. What they were really saying was, make my computers work, don't tell me how. If I started getting into the nitty gritty on technology, my customers like, please stop talking. Just here's a check. Don't explain, don't explain. That's also changed. Guys, you're expected to be educators now. If you're internal IT, you're supposed to be educating your executive staff. You're supposed to be educating your users. If you're a managed service provider, you're supposed to be educating your customers. On what, you might ask? Dude, the most powerful technology that's ever existed in the world is on everybody's phone right now. There's like 10 people in this room that probably don't have ChatGPT on their phone. Think about the power in that thing that you've imported. Your customer has that too. Your exec has that too. They're using those tools and they're looking at all of us and they're not saying, tell me how it works. They're saying, what should I do with this? How can I make my job better? How can I make my business run faster? How can I use AI to leverage all these things I see on the internet and on TikTok and make this thing easier? And with that comes this huge attack vector that we're not used to. With that comes a huge responsibility to shift from reactive to proactive, to shift from I'm not gonna tell you how it works to I'm gonna tell you how to use it safely. When do you have time for that if you're juggling 50 different tools? When do you have time for that if all the legacy technology running in your business requires manual day-to-day operations on repetitive tasks? You don't. Guys, it's time to rethink this. It's time to look at ourselves and say, hey, I realize that I've worked in this manner, in this fashion for so many years, but I'm gonna have to shift my mindset. Guys, that is what at NinjaOne we are doing on a global scale, is we are out here trying to help people like you and people in my community shift our mindsets. I don't get paid a commission. I'm not here to sell you. I'm here to help you understand what we are seeing in the worldwide scale and realize that it is time to rethink what got us here. I do have a booth. We would love to talk to you. I hope this has been helpful today. And guys, I love this event. I've been coming here since, I don't know, this, including the pandemic, it's gotta be like my eighth one in a row. Enjoy the rest of the show. Enjoy the rest of the content. Thank you so much for your time. And if nothing else, remember, what got you here won't get you there. Thanks very much, guys. Have a great day.